Seven, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
You'll never have the sacred stone.
Oh, this you crazy mother.
Hello, everyone. This is Danny Lambert with the Plush Republic channel. I am lucky enough to be here with Kris Rudeegraap from Sendoso today, CEO and co-founder. We're going to be talking a little bit about ABM, a little bit about Sendoso, and a lot about marketing trends, what we're seeing going on in the industry. So, Kris, if you wouldn't mind, could you introduce yourself and a little bit about Sendoso?
For sure, yeah. Thanks so much, Jenny. I'm the founder or co-founder and CEO of Sendoso. We are a sending platform, so we help companies send out different types of direct mail, gifts, and other campaigns. And we are full service, so we're helping them source, track, store, send everything related to it. So it's as easy to, send out a physical item as it is to click and send an email.
Yeah, easy is certainly the name of the game with you guys. I'm personally a Sendoso user. We use them for almost every one of our ABM related campaigns. Everything from triggering within Salesforce to within Amazon, even via API. You guys have really made all of our campaigns way easier to send than they have been previously. So that's been really interesting. Just because I'm kind of wondering how you figured that this space would become as prevalent as it is, because ABM's kind of been evolving now for some time, and there's players that are very niche. I think of like Sigster for email signature, or maybe Lob for just direct mail. But you guys are kind of that white glove concierge and handle a lot of different things that everybody else. When you were first coming up with this concept, like when did that light bulb come that this was the right idea?
Yeah, so I was in sales for about 10 years before starting this company. So I kind of saw this opportunity to leverage this offline channel just from my day-to-day as being a salesperson and trying to connect and build better relationships with my prospects. And so I was, manually sending out handwritten notes and sending out little thank you packages and this and that, sending out coffee cards. And it was just like perfect alignment and timing to the market when I saw this. And then I also saw really Engagio making a big splash about really marketing the terminology around ABM. And so I think it was just right place, right time to come to market. And ABM was just a natural fit for some of the stuff that I was already doing kind of on the sales side.
Yep. No, it definitely makes a lot of sense. It's almost like this hybrid between marketing and sales enablement, trying to join the stuff that we've been all trying to do in the past, putting a name on it, and then making it very accessible for everyone. Where do you kind of see ABM as a whole going? We've already seen some consolidation of vendors, and I'm assuming we'll probably see some more of that. But what do you think, the future is from either tactics or platforms, or what you can expect to see coming out over the next year or even beyond that?
Yeah. So when I think of tactics and consolidation, I think those are two different questions. But for the tactics wise, I think we'll see more of more kind of omni-channel or new channels people are using. I think video and like some of the stuff that Vidyard's doing, I think will be more widely adopted. I think there'll be more of these, events to connect with folks, direct mail. I think some of these channels that are really helping you build that better relationship with your customer or prospect. Because I think one of the biggest things that ABM is doing is you're really trying to, create that deal first, but really the land and expand that happens thereafter is a big part of the ABM kind of mindset in my eyes. So I think tools that really help you stand out and build better relationships will be key. I think they'll be more of a ABM focus too on like post sales. So how are customer success teams and customer marketing teams really looking at ABM and using that as their kind of post sales? I think ABM is really top of funnel, but I think we'll start to see that shift throughout the entire kind of renewals and retention cycles. And I do think there will be more consolidation. I think ABM as a whole is really bringing together marketing and sales. So I think that there will be continued consolidation or continued merging of marketing tools and sales tools that might come together to make the marketing and sales alignment that much better. Or additional marketing tools that help with ABM, like the Marketo, buying visible and things like that, which consolidates different pain points in the ABM kind of tech stack.
And how would you respond to people who are reluctant? I know like DataFox being acquired by Oracle, that was an interesting one. Do you find that to be a turnoff to you as a purchaser of MarTech when someone maybe as stagnant as an Oracle would acquire someone like that who you may be considering, or do you think that's all well and good and it's just inevitable that that's the next step for these, new companies coming into the space?
I mean, it's a great question because in my mind, when I think of Oracle, sometimes I think of like, are they going to continue to pump money into this DataFox and continue to allow them to innovate? And maybe they will, because they have the chance that they have deep bank accounts and no more needing to go to VCs. You got, your parent company that can continue. So on the good side, I think that could happen. I think on the other side of the equation, we see sometimes the opposite happening where some of these acquisitions go to these big companies to die. So I think it's too early to tell, but I would be hopeful that, DataFox can, leverage its parent company, and hopefully, there's the 10,000 salespeople that can help push DataFox to the next level too. So you get a little mini army when you join the big company.
Yeah, it really is like an interesting dichotomy, right? They had, Bronto earlier, I guess a couple years ago, and then, with Marketo going underneath Adobe, like some of these are really, really high level, and you wonder what the trajectory of them post is. So it'll be definitely interesting to see those play out. One of the interesting things that I wonder from a product perspective, and I'm sure a lot of this starts from your seat, is integrations are so key, right, to your business. Salesforce obviously being the one that everybody needs. But then after that, it starts to become which platforms make the most sense for me to integrate with first and why. And I'm interested to know from your perspective how you guys decide what integrations make sense and when to prioritize those over maybe some other product features.
Yeah, so I mean, we have a dedicated integrations team, so we're constantly thinking about what's the next and greatest integration. I think, as you said, Salesforce was a no-brainer. The marketing automation platforms, we really looked where people or where our customers, whether they're the sales users, the marketing users, or the customer success users, where are they spending their time, and where would it be beneficial? So that's why most people spend their time in their CRM or their marketing automation or their sales engagement tools like the Outreaches and the Sales Lofts and the Grooves of the world. So we've knocked all those out. So we're looking at other areas where people are spending time or other maybe non-traditional integrations. So like, what is the CRM of choice in like the automotive space, or other areas where we can leverage our technology and our logistics infrastructure for other integrations that you wouldn't think of when you're just kind of a typical tech startup.
Yeah, I guess that is an interesting play, and especially when you think about how much direct and customer-focused marketing they have with like auto dealerships and a handful of other businesses. I think a lot of like arenas with trying to sell ticket packages, like all those have very niche needs, but also you guys fit very well into their stack.
Yeah, and a lot of them have unique software that they use too.
Yeah.
So
like are you finding more homegrown, or you find that to be just very industry specific software?
A lot of industry verticalized software we're seeing. So that's a big push. And then just we're also looking at other users too. Like we organically see like recruiters wanting to use this. So like, what are the tools that they use? Or we're seeing like what partner teams wanting to use this. What are the partner softwares that people are using? So yeah, it's very interesting to see kind of all these new and unique softwares that we can integrate with.
Yep. And with all the different use cases that there are, and I mean, even outside of just what we were talking about of like retention, new users, pipeline velocity campaigns, onboarding for staff. I mean, there's a million different ways that you can be leveraged. What do you find to be the most popular? Like, are you finding it to be mostly driving, accelerating deals? Or you find that people are really evening it out and having campaigns of all sorts of nature?
I still think we're kind of in the infamousy where we're seeing people still use our direct mail and gifting platform for like top of funnel demand gen. I think historically that's where people can instantly see results and have historically have used it in that means. I think some of our newer, innovative, forward-thinking companies are starting to use it in some of the cooler ways that you mentioned, like, after they hit 30 days of their onboarding, let's automatically trigger like a graduation gift from their usage, or different ways where you can incorporate sending these physical things that maybe you've sent an email in the past, but you can leverage our platform to trigger off a cool gift or direct mail item. So I think that over the course of the next few years, we'll start to see these new best practices around how to use gifting or our sending platform in new use cases.
Yep. That makes a lot of sense, and it kind of begs the question that I'd love to hear your perspective on is either for the people who are listening who are trying to sell ABM into their executive team or have just gotten it or have used it for a while. One of the biggest black holes, I guess you could say, is how to measure it, right? It's not traditional demand gen. There's a million people saying it's engagement. There's some people saying it's still pipeline generated. What are you seeing as the best ways to measure ABM effectiveness, either that you use or internally or industry wide, to really understand the impact that the efforts are having?
Yeah, so I mean, I think there's ABM effectiveness. I think there's different tools. So like, I think Visible is a great tool for attribution tracking. So I think overall, Engagio as well, they have a really good tool where you're trying to track like engagement minutes. So I think there's some really cool tools out there that can help you with that. And I'd say probably that's where I would start. We help people track, their direct mail effectiveness through, tagging to Salesforce campaigns automatically or a few other techniques just so that we can push data where other data is. But it really comes down to making sure that all of your activities that you're doing are automatically tracking data to a central source, maybe Salesforce, that then can be extracted into other softwares that can kind of measure and attribute.
Yeah. And we use Visible internally as well. And it's definitely helpful to have that custom attribution model. You can set different weighting. And, one of the tactics that we run that has shown to be the most effective, but also kind of gets missed in that whole analytical scheme is, pre-show packages that we're driving to the booth, either for a competition or whatever it may be. And that tends to be the most effective. They show up to our booth, they're like, hey, look at what I got in the mail. And I'm like, Sendoso, right? But that touch isn't being accounted for. And it's an interesting thing, and I hear a lot of the pain points of like, well, I'm trying to sell this, but you can't just show them like a spreadsheet and it sells the whole value of ABM. There's those interactions. There's a lot more like it, and I think
Totally.
that'll be interesting in time to see how all of that plays out, because it is a frustration for marketers like myself and many others. But you're right, like Visible does a really good job, and so do many others.
To that point too, though, to continue on that, I think one thing that's interesting is I think there is that kind of like sentimental or goodwill that you just know it's working, or like you can see that it's working, and it's hard. There's not like an exact data point. So some of the times we see customers look at just like time saved and look at that as kind of like an ROI attribution of like, if we would have tried to do this on our own, it would have, taken us, months. We wouldn't have been able to execute on this, sending campaign like 2 weeks before an event.
Yep.
So we do see some of the marketers that we work with, make budget decisions based on just like the time that they're savings or the opportunity cost of not doing it.
Yeah.
So, and I think that is it becomes more prevalent that people are sending really cool creative things, and an exec gets it before they're going to a conference and they're like, hey, why aren't we doing this? And then it kind of is like this viral effect. So
yeah, what are some of those like really cool campaigns that you've seen this year?
Yeah, good question. I mean, we see so many, which is really awesome. Trying to think of some that sticks out in my head. I saw this one that Uberflip did that I thought was pretty cool. It's this Netflix and chill kind of campaign, which I liked it because it's kind of like relevant to like I guess a social media meme or something that's like you can like kind of relate to in a way. Kind of gives you a laugh. They sent like this really cool like custom hot pink box with like a bag of popcorn and like a little card, and the offer was like take a demo and get a like a Netflix subscription or something. So it's kind of unique and different, something that you're not really expecting. And it performed really well. They did it a really long time, back to back, and tried it out with different personas with different messaging. So I thought that was pretty cool, where you're kind of tying in something a bit more creative, but it's still, connect to your brand because you're using custom, branding, and it's not something that's crazy difficult to implement.
Yep. Yeah, I saw that, and the one I saw very recently, I was going through your guys' LinkedIn. I saw that Chili Piper one that they sent you with the chili
hot
bottle.
sauce.
Yeah, that was a pretty good one as well. It's really interesting too. We leverage you guys for a lot of things, and being able to take all of that workload off. And this is kind of parlaying into my next question of having something set up like predetermined that when an event triggers it within our CRM, or we just know something subjectively we can just trigger it in Salesforce and have you guys take care of the send is amazing, and it gets us to be way more productive than we used to have to call up our direct printer and get all this stuff organized. But then it begs the question for me is, what percentage of sending are you seeing is automated, off of events and trying to do it in this very automated fashion versus having it be like more hyper personalized, going through their LinkedIn, finding out information and doing it on like a one-off send basis?
Yeah, so we see kind of three different categories of sends. Along with those two, we also see this kind of bulk send, which is where like, hey, we want to send like 10,000 of these at once or something. So I would say like right now, we still probably test about 50% are like one-to-one personalized, the salesperson or the CSM or the marketer clicks send on it. And so that's hyper-personalized or just like in the moment. Now to that example though, it is something that's really nice because it's queued up in advance a lot of times too. So they might have pre-ordered 1,000 of these and then they can send it on demand and it goes out like the same day. So there is some like thoughtful thinking before, but it's just like when the time is right, they're going to click and send.
Yeah.
So that's about, I think about half, and then there's probably another. I would guesstimate the last time I looked, another like 30% was more of these triggered things. So triggering off of Marketo flows, or triggering off of people being added to Salesforce campaigns, or triggering off of SurveyMonkey or these other integration triggers based on actions there, even API triggers. And then probably the last 20% is just like either CSV uploads or like like bulk triggers, which are just like, hey, I'm going to send these 1,000 out at the same time, where you're just kind of doing a bit more of, airstrike, covering a bunch of accounts for either, an event or just like a big demand gen campaign.
Yep. And do you find that like field is getting a lot more or demand gen is getting a lot more? Like where do you find people breaking down their budgets within their spends for you guys in terms of like campaign tactics?
I mean, one thing I'm seeing interesting is like the ability for sales and marketing or sales and field to collaborate more on this, where marketing's like, marketing will pick up some of the cost for this because sales, for whatever reason, even though they bring in the revenues, don't really have budgets
Yep.
in a lot of places.
That's very true.
But marketing is like more than willing to help out and say, hey, we'll cover the cost of this to an extent. But we're seeing some companies will have like a sales budget too. But I think it's interesting how marketing and demand gen will typically cover the cost, but they'll give it over and say, hey, sales, each rep gets $500 a month or $300 a month to send out. So that they can kind of control the messaging, control like the items that are being sent. But the salesperson can kind of click and send when they want, so they're more autonomous. So there's not, because I think historically it was kind of this like butting heads. Sales wanted to send something, they'd ask marketing like 3 weeks later would say, okay, I'll do it. And then the salesperson's like, that person's not even in my pipeline anymore. So like today you need real time stuff. And so now it's like sales is enabling marketing with better than they ever could.
Yeah, I think that's I forget when you added this feature, but one of my favorite ones for sure is allotting budgets by person. So, you may have your field reps will have $200 a month and your inside sales may have X amount and SDRs have X amount. And it's really great because then you can divvy it up. You could even divvy it up by campaign concept, like demand gen related 500, upsell related 100. And it really is like, go free, do whatever you need to do. We've already set up all the tactics that you guys can use, or we can customize it. And it's like very piecemeal together. When you need something, they don't really have to ask, which again is a time saver like we talked about before.
Exactly.
As far as features go for you guys, what do you have that's exciting coming up in 2019?
Yeah, so this year, we're doing some really cool redesign. So we're launching like a really nice kind of some UI UX stuff that we've learned from the tens of thousands of users that we've been learning and seeing their actions. So I think that's going to be really cool. More integrations. So really we've got, this year we might have another 50 integrations come out. Some might be relevant to you. Some might, you wouldn't even know what the company was because it's in a different vertical, in a different industry, yada, yada. And then we're working on just more automating some of the different things that people can do more. And then there's some interesting stuff around just like interest-based data and really like helping companies send like the right thing to the right person at the right time. So really diving into some, some predictive AI and some other things that will really make it easier to figure out what to send and to who.
Yeah, it's really awesome. I think on our last call was with Uberflip, which is funny that you mentioned them earlier. They're on episode 2. which we'll be sharing soon. It was very much the same concept around, third-party data from a Bombora, the equivalent, and then typing that in to help you get that intent pair with your first party for the perfect combination of assisting marketers make the right decisions and sales, to your point.
Exactly.
Yeah. One of the things that I find the most interesting, and I know viewers really enjoy, is kind of looking under the hood a little bit to see how brands that have scaled quite well and are doing well structure themselves. So for you guys, how do you really structure your marketing team to be able to bring in new business?
Yeah. So right now, our marketing team is broken up into, there's our content marketing team, our content marketing manager. We've got our marketing programs, marketing ops, and then one of the things I think, and then we've got like our marketing manager. One of the things I think we've done that was interesting is we've converted some of our like top SDRs into what we call engagement specialists, who are basically they leave the kind of the sales org and then move on to becoming like mini demand gen folks. And so we've seen that has been one of the more effective things that we've done. And so they're more aligned with marketing activities like call blitzes before a conference, or people that are engaging with content that might be in funnel. How can we engage back with them? Different initiatives that like the SDR might put lower on their list to do, but marketing like really wants to move that person into like an MQL. So that role and how we structured marketing has been helpful, I think.
How do you incentivize? Because that's a very interesting position, because we do have that struggle, right? You always want to work that hot inbound or even that hot outbound, and then there's a lot of those intermediary like ebook, white paper leads, everything in between that
Exactly.
kind of go left unworked. How do you incentivize that role to want to do those things?
Yeah, so we position it as a promotion. So you get promoted into that role. And then we position it as you get more autonomy to learn new things. You're now engaging with the marketing team more. You're taking other tasks that you've never done before. And we really position it as kind of a nice career step. From there, I think there is a myth that everyone that's an SDR wants to be an AE. And so this is just a nice stepping stones for maybe some more of the folks that they were great at SDRs, but we want to push them into maybe the marketing demand gen field. And so then, we switched them from being so kind of variable comp focused, where it's like, I need to get 100 meetings today, yada, 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 to being a bit more like, hey, you're going to be more focused on our general initiatives that marketing wants to do. So maybe engaging with a white paper download is something that's going to provide us with better value longer term and, warm up that lead. But, for us, it was a smart investment to move them into that role.
That's a really interesting, and for everyone who's listening, ourselves included, who need those leads work, that's a really, really good way of doing it that I've never thought of before. Where also would you guys say that you're placing your bets in 2019? Is it more advertising, content marketing? Is it ABM? Is it trade shows? What are the real buckets that you're pushing hard on this year?
Definitely conferences and trade shows. I think as much face-to-face time, and also field events too. So this is, exec dinners, lunch and learns, sporting events. So really putting an effort there this year. I think that is big for us. Outside of that, looking at putting more effort into buying softwares. So looking at what are the different things that we can do to kind of become more efficient or more automated and make our team smarter workers rather than harder workers. And then we're just in this kind of hyper growth scaling mode. So just like making sure that we're hiring enough people to cover everything. So just a lot of SDRs, a lot of sales reps, a lot of different people on the support side and success to handle all the growth.
And on that is a really interesting question as well, is what do you think the right proportions are from adding marketing people to salespeople? Is it 3-to-1 sales to marketing? Or is it even? What does that split look like?
That's a really good question. We're actually working on some exercises right now for that. I don't think that has been widely covered as a topic. There's not like a lot of information that we found on like the market. I mean, there's like the SDR to AE ratio, or the AE to SDR ratio, or like the CSM to account ratio, and all like CSM to maybe AE. And there's a lot of there. For us, we're really trying to kind of define that now, and maybe looking at how we support that from like demand gen role of like how many demand gen folks to sales reps do we need, or to, so it's a really good topic. I'd love to kind of continue to think through that, or share our thoughts over the next month or so as we're looking to that.
Yeah, I mean, I can definitely send you over the stuff that we're working on as well, if any of it's going to be helpful, because you're right. That's something we're looking for when we're justifying, increasing our budgets X amount. How many more salespeople are we going to need to support it? Are we even aligned right now for the amount of demand that we have? Like you mentioned, no one's working those lower level, colder leads. What does that add up to? It's just a very complex dynamic that I don't really think anyone's addressed. I think it's just been like,
I know.
the topo figures are super helpful. Frankly, that's kind of how we've been backing into it, is like the topo benchmarks versus what we handle internally in terms of converting MQLs to SQLs to ops to closed ops, and then backing into like lead gen numbers and then time on call, all that stuff. I'll send it over to you after the call and see if you can't
I'd love
dig
to see
through
that.
it. But that's one of those things that I don't think anyone really has an answer for, and whoever can definitely send both of us the answer.
Exactly.
And in terms of your tech stack, I know you mentioned you're looking for a lot of additional tools, trying to find those efficiencies where they live. What does your tech stack look like today?
Yeah, so we use a combination. We use obviously Salesforce and Sendoso. We're using Drift. We use ZoomInfo. We use Ringlead. We're using Autopilot right now, but we'll transition to Marketo. We use Instapage, LinkedIn Sales Nav. We use both SalesLoft and Outreach. We use, probably forgetting some, but
the SalesLoft and Outreach one is a very interesting, because they're like the head-to-heads. What made you run with both of them?
So they're both really good partners for us. And we actually originally had some of the sales team on Outreach when it was kind of in the earlier days when sales was doing kind of full cycle sales prospecting themselves and stuff. And then when we brought on our SDR leader, he had some great experience with SalesLoft, and so he wanted to pick up SalesLoft for his team. So now we've just kind of used them both. I think it's probably not optimal in some cases, because I know there's some deduping and some other things that you can do within the platform if it's using a central one. But for us, it seemed to work, and we love both of them. So, I mean, we'll probably keep it up.
Yeah, what works, right? And it's tough. Everyone has some things, and if SalesLoft, you're listening, better call analytics. I want them. I want better analytics, but that's really interesting that you guys would have both of those, and that tech stack sounds very similar to ours. One of the other questions I had in there was using Ringlead, and I think you said ZoomInfo, correct?
Yeah.
Are you using Ringlead just for the deduplicate account matching, and you're bypassing the enrichment and going with ZoomInfo for data?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And this is kind of the last question I have on organizational stuff, but it is an interesting one that I think a lot of people kind of shy away from. Given that you're growing so quickly, what is your approach to training new staff?
Yeah, so for training new staff, we're actually in the process of actually hiring a dedicated trainer right now. So that's something that we've been looking for the past couple months now. So that's one of the key hires that we have right now open. But in addition to that, we use WorkRamp right now as kind of the tool that we use for like initial onboardings. And then we're looking at rolling out another tool. We've been looking at one called QStream, which is more of like a one-offs, like one question a week kind of thing, just to keep people's keep track on the pace on what people retained, because I think you often train people and kind of onboard them for the first month or so and give them a million things to learn, and then like 3 months later have they retained it. So we're kind of trying to make sure that we do a great onboarding, we do great constant updates of training, and then just little tidbits of info here and there.
Yeah. And is that primarily targeted at sales folk, or is that across the board?
I mean, it's really sales and marketing, sales and customer success and support. I mean, really the customer facing roles. But we do try to do a good amount of kind of, cross team training. So we want to make sure that, our engineers are, privy to some of the new things that we've rolled out, or, it's always interesting, I think, to have a team that kind of knows a lot more than they, the transparency and training can't hurt.
Yeah.
So some of the stuff might not be used in the field of, here's our industry, or here's our, here's some ABM stuff, but it's good for an engineer to know what ABM is and, the details behind it all and stuff.
Yeah. I find that to always be one of the big struggles with companies on a large growth trajectory is training appropriately. A lot of times you'll see like a learning management system like handed over and just reading through all these docs and not really understanding what matters and why. So it's very interesting that you have that in place because that is really a struggle a lot of the time. So I do want to keep these sessions, relatively short. So I only have 2 questions
Sure.
left for you. One's pretty serious and one's not so serious. If you can make just one suggestion to all the listeners and viewers in terms of what to focus on in 2019 to help them maximize their returns, it could be anything. It could be marketing, software, anything at all, sales. What would your suggestion to the viewers be?
One thing to focus on. I say I would focus on just like the strategy and tactics first, and making sure that you're not just like one-off jumping into, the one person on the marketing team just wants to do ABM all of a sudden. I think, take a step back, take a breather, what's working, what hasn't worked, and really set the tactics in place. Make sure you're resetting that every quarter too, and just kind of making sure everything's going as smoothly.
And is that how often you're breaking that down? Quarterly?
We do like a yearly planning, and then we break down quarterly to see what we're doing. Where should we invest more? Where should we invest less? So we're constantly kind of defining what we're doing and stuff.
And how quick? Sorry, this is an interesting one. How quick are you to pull the trigger on any given channel or tactic? Because that's how long does it take for a channel to ramp up to the point where it can show ROI, particularly when we're talking about ABM? So when you're testing out new things, is it a month? Is it a quarter? Is it a year? Does it really depend?
I think it depends. I mean, we usually try to give things a good enough time so they can really see success or not. So we usually look at things on a quarter. We're not cutting things quicker than that. There may be like sub portions of a campaign we're doing or something that we pull the plug on, but it's the general thing, like our thesis of where we're demand gen or other things are really usually quarter or longer.
Got you. And then the last question for you is, what is your favorite Disney movie?
My favorite Disney movie.
Be careful with this one. You can offend a lot of people.
I know. I'd probably say that like my favorite from back in the day that I can remember watching was The Jungle Book. I love that one. But I would say that I have a niece who's probably shown me Frozen like a million times. So I've probably seen that one the most.
Have you seen Moana yet?
I haven't seen that one yet, no.
In terms of like the modern day, mine's Lion King, by the way. Like I'm also very much a classic guy, but Moana is a very close second. I watched it with, I think it was my cousin as well, and she's like, "Watch this movie with me," and man, it is equally as good, if not better, than the vast majority of movies out there.
I'll have to check it out.
Well, Kris, I really appreciate the time. This is super helpful stuff. We should definitely keep in touch. Maybe do some follow-ups depending on if we solve some of these questions that we were talking about. And if you guys haven't seen Sendoso, you haven't used Sendoso, go to their website, read some of their content, check them out. They're helping our organization and many, many others make very effective use of direct mail and really well thought out syndicated ABM campaigns. And they should definitely make a good addition to your tech stack. And I appreciate it. And I'll talk to you guys soon.
Cool. Thanks, Danny.
Thank you.